Now let us talk about the various components of this IoT that we have been talking about in this unit throughout. The most important component of our IoT is the devices and the sensors. Devices and the sensors, they are the components of the connectivity layer. These smart sensors, they continuously collect the data from the environment and transmit it to the next layer. Example, our phone, it is a device that has multiple sensors into it. It has the GPS, which will keep on tracking our position at any point of time. It has accelerometer, it has camera, but our phone, it does not simply sense things, it does many other things. So devices and sensors, if we talk about, these are the various components of the connective layer. The sensors that are connected, the devices like our mobile phone, it has multiple sensors. So this is the most important component because this is going to perform the whole task of sensing the things, and when the things are being sensed by the sensors properly, then only the correct action can take place. So the very first thing, the very first component of our IoT is devices and the sensors. Second is data processing. IoT systems, they send huge data from devices, and this data, it must be managed efficiently to generate the meaningful result. So another important component for our IoT would be data processing. At every point of time, the data is being sent by our sensors to various devices. This data has to be processed well, it has to be managed well, so that it can generate some meaningful result. What our entire intention is using these IoT devices to achieve the correct result, to gain better things from these IoT devices. So for generating the meaningful result, sensors, they will keep on sending the data. Now it is the task of this data processing to convert this huge data from collecting these data from the devices and to manage these data efficiently to generate certain meaningful result out of it. Another component of IoT would be networking connection and internet connectivity. Without internet connection, nothing will happen. If we want our data to come from the sensors to other devices and perform the action, we need to have the network connection. Network connection and internet connectivity, it is required for communication. Internet connectivity, it provides an IP address to each device. See, whatever devices are being connected onto the internet, they have to have an IP address with them. The sensors, they can be connected to the cloud through various mediums of communication and transport, such as the cellular network, the satellite network, via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, wide area network, low power wide area network, and many more. So these sensors, they are to be connected to the cloud through various mediums of communication and transport. So networking connection, it is very much important for this IoT. This is an important component of our Internet of Things. Then the last component, which is the most important one again, that is a user interface. Now user interface, these are the physical and visible parts of IoT system which are accessible to the user. The user interface. Suppose you have into our mobile phone, we have the GPS. Now this GPS software, it is providing the user interface. So this user interface, what is happening in GPS, it will detect our position at any point of time with the help of various sensing devices. So if that information has to be communicated to us, it has to provide us a correct user interface so that we can easily understand that particular information which is being provided. So the physical and the visible part of the IoT system which is accessible to the user, the information made available to the end user in some way. This can be achieved even with the help of certain alarms onto our phones, or notifying through text or emails. Like we have discussed, if there is a farm, in that particular farm the fuel levels they are going low. So it has to be intimated to the user. So the user interface there would be the alarm, because whenever the fuel level is going down, the alarm will be raised. And so this particular alarm, it is working as a user interface, because the user there, the person there, he is interacting with the alarm. He will get the signal from the alarm, and he will perform the action accordingly. So the user interface, it is a physical and the visible part of the IoT systems. So these are the basic four components of IoT system that makes this entire system, out of which the very first one that we've discussed is the device and the sensors. Second is the data processing, which performs all this function of handling this huge data and converting it into meaningful information. Then we have the networking connection and the internet connectivity, via which this messages they get transferred from one device to another. And the last one, we have the user interface, which are the physical parts or the visible parts which are available to the user. So these are the basic four components of IoT. Now, talking about the IoT communication technology. IoT communication technology here, we can say, first of all, internet, where we are using this 3G network, this 4G network, we are using Wi-Fi. It is one communication technology with the help of which the communication between the devices takes place. Then today we are using this cloud computing. Cloud computing means we do not keep our data all the time onto our local servers. We keep on transmitting the data onto the remote server. So this is another form of communication technology that is being used in IoT, that is called cloud computing. Then we can use RFID, that is radio frequency identification. Radio frequency identification, it can be very well used to communicate the messages from one device to another. Then we have LBS, that is called location based service, or NFC, that is called near field communication, with the help of which, this is another communication technology, with the help of which we can communicate, we can send our data from one device to another. Then we have our smartphones. With the help of smartphone, they are also providing us the way of communicating the data from one network to another. Then we have the social network, with the help of which the communication can take place. So these are various IoT communication technologies that we can use for communicating the information from one device to another and to perform the correct action depending on that information. Now, talking about certain challenges of IoT. Now we have discussed, we have understood what is IoT, why are we using it, where are we using it, how are we using it. Now, in the field of IoT, we definitely face certain challenges. The very first challenge that we face here is the security challenge. Security challenge means the lack of encryption, the insufficient testing and updating, brute forcing and risk of default password. See, here we have discussed in IoT that all the devices, they are communicating with each other. But what if some hacker, he gets track of our activities and start sending some wrong messages? So security challenge, it is very important challenge for IoT, since we are connected by these IoT enabled devices everywhere. So security challenge, lack of encryption. Sometimes encryption is what, when we convert our data from plain text to the coded text. So at some point of time, this coded text, we have this lack of encryption. The data, it gets does not get converted into the coded text. So in that case, that can be hacked up by any person. So and he may miscommunicate us with by sending certain messages, certain wrong messages. So that is important security challenge in the field of IoT. Insufficient testing and updating. Sometimes, since we are using so many devices, using so many IT enabled devices, so sufficient testing of the devices and updation of the devices at correct time does not take place. If we have at our home, we have installed so many devices, so updation of those devices, it is very much necessary, and sufficient testing of those devices is also necessary. Then brute forcing and risk of default password. We suppose we have installed these IoT enabled devices, we have installed these cameras, these surveillance things in our home, but these the password of this, it is being attacked by some other person, so we may be intimated with some wrong information. So that is another security challenge in the field of IoT. Then we have design challenges. Design challenges means battery life is a limitation here. When we are designing these IoT enabled devices, we have limitation into of their battery life. Everything, every device that is communicating with each other, there is a certain battery life into it. So battery life of all these devices, it is a limitation when we are designing such devices. Then again, security of the system, this is another that can be considered into the designing. When we are designing these systems, so our designing challenge here will be to make these devices more secure, to design these devices in such a way that they become more and more secure. Then the next design challenge that we can face is increased cost and time to market. When we build these IoT devices, then the cost increases. Cost of marketing these devices, it increases. So that is another design challenge in the field of IoT. Then we have deployment challenge. Deployment challenge means when we are going to deploy these devices, we are going to actually use these devices. Then at that point of time, the various challenges are being faced. One can be the connectivity challenge, since there are so many devices that we want to connect with each other. All of these devices, they may be using different kind of languages for coding, they may be using different kind of protocols. So connecting all these devices together using certain common protocols, using certain common networking things, that is another challenge when we deploy these devices. Cross platform capability, these platform, they are all working on different things, so providing this cross platform compatibility between these devices, that is another issue that is another challenge that occurs when we deploy these devices. Then data collection and processing, since these devices, they are communicating all the time, so much of data is being transferred. So when we deploy these devices, another challenge that we face here is collection of data and the processing of this data. So these are the few challenges of IoT that majorly occur when a person try to enable these IoT enabled devices. So the major challenges that are faced are security challenge, design challenge, and the deployment challenges. So with this, we can complete with our unit 3, that is all about IoT, Internet of Things.